Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse to talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the debut album from YBN Cordae called The Lost Boy. I'll admit, I'm a little bit surprised that I'm choosing to cover this project. See, I try to keep my ear to the ground when it comes to certain rap crews, but there are others that I have certainly missed the boat on. One of them in the early 2010s was ASAP Mob, but in recent years it feels like it's been the YBN crew. Part of this is another sprawling lineup that seems to be a lot more hype than with credible music to back it up, but another part was the YBN Namir song Rubbing Off the Paint, which was fine, I guess, but not really all that interesting of a hit. And given that he was considered one of the leaders of the crew, I didn't have a lot of incentive to check out YBN Cordae if that was the high watermark of what they were going to deliver. But you know, he just kept showing up and then spitting his ass off. One of the soul-saving graces on that last terrible Logic album, a few other scabbard features, having enough buzz to hit the XXL freshman list this year, and with a freestyle good enough to drive momentum into an upcoming debut album on a major label deal with Atlantic, I figured why not? Could wind up pretty interesting. So what do we get from YBN Cordae on The Lost Boy? So here's the thing. I understand why this album is getting a lot of hype in certain hip-hop circles, because YBN Cordae is laying a good foundation with this project, but also because I'm already seeing a lot of folks describe this album as having the sort of sound and vibe they were really hoping from that rather contentious Chance the Rapper album that dropped the same day. And even if I still like that album, I certainly get why folks might dig this more. The soul vibes, they're tempered with a little bit more darkness and mainstream accessibility. It hits the comfort zone more effectively, and the flows and the production, they do deliver, but it's absolutely a project where the contrast is both a blessing and a curse, and it does leave me questions on how YBN Cordae will develop, because this is good, but there are steps that need to be taken before he hits greatness, and we might as well start with that, and two comparisons that I would argue are the first serious challenges for YBN Cordae to overcome, namely that in his flow, his vocal timbre, and his melodic choices on his hooks, he reminds me a lot of both Chance the Rapper and J. Cole. And given the instrumental palette and content that YBN Cordae uses, that absolutely makes sense. Might as well be a good place for him to start his career, but I find myself listening for what sets him apart in his own lane, and as of now, there really isn't much. I'd argue he's a better singer than J. Cole, although smoother vocal production does some heavy lifting here in comparison with J. Cole's occasionally fried out tone that he produces himself, and he's got a knack for blunter storytelling and swagger that feels natural alongside Pusha-T's sneering delivery on Nightmares Are Real, and then even better trading bars opposite Anderson Paak on RMP, by far one of the most infectious summer team-ups I've heard this year. But for as much as there's some good chemistry opposite Chance on Bad Idea, it is hard to avoid the suspicion that Chance the Rapper has a level of layered refinement in his wordplay that YBN Cordae just haven't quite reached yet. Now, I do think he will get there, dig a little bit deeper into his content, and I can see the capacity for more introspection, especially as his bars and his interconnected rhymes are much sharper than I expected. There is the technical acumen here, but I also get the impression that the label has turned on the gas for his success very early, and he just hasn't had the chance to cut a lot deeper yet. I think he will, just might need a little more time. Now, that's also not saying that there aren't places where he does delve a little bit deeper here. The most obvious example comes on 1,000 Words, which might at first seem to be an obvious shot at Instagram and the distortion of real life that can come through social media, but he's also not about to place himself above the situation or highlight some legit positives from that landscape. People want to be remembered in some way or just get dazzled by the spotlight, especially with the accessibility to enter into the scene, if only for a moment. More the key here comes through on balance, and I kind of respect he approaches it like that. And his increased focus on family is a nice touch too, even if it does feel a little jarring juxtaposed against the flexing on Broke as Fuck. From a deft touch in capturing the detail and awkwardness of taking a girl to meet the family on Thanksgiving when he's not sure how long the relationship's gonna last, to the questions of how now seeing success contextualize the poverty he might grow up on Bad Idea and Been Around, to some of the storytelling on Family Matters, where he can see all the the family who was trying to keep quiet and not stifle his success with their problems, not hurt his inspiration, but there's still some real guilt on his part that he's not doing more to help them. Hell, when you precede that track with Nightmares Are Real with Pusha-T with an emphasis on that harsher grind and alienation from some of his family, and then follow it with We Gon' Make It with Meek Mill, where the aspirational focus is broader that could well elevate everyone around him, there's a bit of a mini arc on the back half of the album. That being said, there are definitely points where you can tell that YBN Cordae might be getting a little ahead of himself, or might not come across as wise as he's being framed, mostly because of some very jarring tonal shifts from line to line. I brought up Broke as Fuck already, which in losing some of that connective tissue loses some impact for me. I get that it's more modern, but it's never quite clicked. But We Gon' Make It shows his whole savior of hip-hop angle feels a bit thin, especially when you can draw parallels to his obvious inspirations and highlight how some of his flexing is not that different than his peers. He might recognize his own hypocrisy, but it is still there. But the real dud lines unfortunately come in the closing track, Lost and Found, where not only does he say people are biting his sound as the brand names will pile in, kind of ironic coming from him, but then he also says that XXXTentacion is the Tupac of his time, and that he was speaking like Obama in his prime, which is such a wild overreach, even divorced of context, that it makes me question the rest of the insight on the project. It should never have been the last song. It's a really unfortunate note to end off the album, which I otherwise really liked. It could have ended with a Meek Mill joint. Now, all this circles back to the production and the instrumentation, and again, where I'm a little bit more conflicted than I would like to be. On the one hand, I like the restrained, soulful touches on tunes like Bad Idea, the guitar-backed hi-hat skitter on Thanksgiving, the twinkling R&B restraint on Thousand Words, and the terrific rounded groove of Family Matters, anchoring a really great hook from Arin Ray. And when he does step a little outside his pocket, like the darker, bassy organs, piano, and spare percussion of Nightmares Are Real, or the stripped-back G-Funk-Nautic of RMP, the latter that was ironically produced by J. Cole, and honestly I would prefer J. Cole on a song like that too, he fits into those lanes effectively, and all of this has been given a lot of polish. Maybe even a little too much, if I'm being honest. Yeah, call me a sucker for some slightly scratchier samples and vintage hip-hop. Go ahead, it's true. But I'm often left feeling that a little bit more organic crackle and grit might be able to mask how some of the percussion lines don't quite blend with the pickups of the groove as cleanly as they should. From the clinking trap off the keening flute of Have Mercy, to the oily vocal sample, runny guitar, and blocky, muffled stutter of the groove behind Back Home, which sadly comes back to bear with that clicking beat off the lead guitar on Been Around, and the blaring horn off the hi-hat and the blocky bass of Lost and Found. And while this production does have a little bit more regional character than your standard trap clunkers that are more atonal, again, that J. Cole influence is definitely shining through here. If I'm looking for the instrumental tones that could make YBN Cordae in its own class, I'm not quite sure I'm hearing them just yet. Those forebears cast long shadows, especially when they produce for you. But as a whole, I do like this more than I expected. Not quite swinging for the fences yet, but getting the bass hits you need as an artist getting that mainstream push on his debut. There's certainly a lot of talent here and some really good artistic instincts, but the next steps do need to come with developing a more distinctive sound and digging a little bit deeper to avoid some questionable directions. I get how he might not have had full time to go deeper, but it's absolutely the next step after tour. But that comes with artist development, and labels aren't keen on that these days, so I'm a little worried. But as it is, yeah, some folks might be saying it, but I'm being a little generous these days, but when it's good stuff, I'll recognize it. Light 7 out of 10, and definitely a recommendation from me. Definitely worth hearing if any of the influences I described are up your alley. But if you want to pay attention to a promising talent that's on the horizon, yeah, you know what? Good stuff. Check him out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I'm a little surprised that I chose to review this, but there is something here that I do appreciate. I think this kid's got talent going forward, and just some fine-tuning would get him on the right path. So if you want to buy or stream it, links down in the description below. I got the poll up there. I'm curious where y'all gonna actually fall on this one, and comments, hey, I'm curious where you guys particularly think, especially in comparison with some of his influences. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you're looking for the newest episode of Billboard Breakdown, it is on the second channel. Links in the card right over here. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.